Hello, this is the introduction to Chapter 6 about how consumers make rational decisions, how they maximize their utility. So the chapter starts out with this issue of assumptions, that when we talk about rationality and how consumers maximize, we assume they're rational, we assume choices exist, we assume they have to pay positive prices, and that there are constraints, that is, limiting factors of time and income. Then what's utility? It's satisfaction, not usefulness. Utility is subjective. Everybody's utility is different. Anyway, you can read the chapter. Marginal utility is what we're after because we always compare the marginal benefits of an action to the marginal costs. In this case, the marginal benefits are measured by marginal utility, and then the marginal costs are factored in as well. So we have to talk about marginal utility, which is the additional utility from an additional unit of a good consumed. Now there's something called the law of diminishing marginal utility, which means that as you consume more of the same good, each successive unit of the good consumed decreases, that is, your added utility decreases. So if I get my first Mercedes SLS, I get 90 gajillion units of utility from it. But if I get the second, I only get 45 gajillion units of utility. If I get a third Mercedes SLS, I'll probably only get like 5 gajillion. Now, if I were to get 7 of these things, I suspect that my utility of the marginal utility of the 7th one would be about 0. So then, what is the utility maximizing rule? How do you know if you've spent your money in a way that maximizes your total utility? And the answer is this condition has to be satisfied. On the last units purchased of goods A and B, because we assume you're only going to buy 2 goods, we put you in the simplest world possible. Goods A and B are the only ones you can buy. So the marginal utility per dollar of good A has to be equal to the marginal utility per dollar of the second. And if the condition is not satisfied, you can give back some of the one that you don't like as much and buy more of the good that you do like more. Anyway, this little chart would help you figure out marginal utility. M&Ms, if you have 0 units, you get 0 utility. If you have the first unit of M&Ms, there's the quantity 1. If you get the first unit of M&Ms, it gives you 30 utils. Your marginal utility from that pack of gum is 30. Pack of M&Ms. If you buy the second one, your total utility goes from 30 to 55, which means your marginal utility is 25. By the third, it goes from 55 total utils to 75, which means marginal utility is 20, etc. But you pay 50 cents for these 30 marginal utils. So the question is, how many are you buying per dollar? So if you get 30 for 50 cents, it means you're buying utility at the rate of 60 per dollar when you buy this first pack. So that's what marginal utility per dollar is. And then for the other good, gum, you look at the marginal utility and then you divide it by the price, because the price of gum is only 25 cents. So if you get 18 utils for 25 cents, you're buying utility at the rate of 72 per dollar. 18 divided by 25 cents. So that's that. And then you spend whatever your income is. In this case, it's $2.50. You just buy whatever gives you the most utility per dollar first. So you buy this first. Then after you bought that, your choice is the second pack of gum or the first pack of M&Ms. 64 versus 60. You would buy this one. Next, you would buy, your choice is to buy the third pack of gum, 50 marginal utils per dollar, or the first pack of M&Ms, 60, so you buy this one. Then the next, it's 50 and 50, you have the money, so you buy both. The next after that is 40 and 40, you buy both, you have the money, and now you've spent $2.50, and you have maximized, because on the last units purchased, the marginal utility per dollar of M&Ms is 40, and the marginal utility per dollar of gum is 40 also. So anyway, we can use utility to derive a demand curve, because if the price of gum changes from 25 cents to 50 cents, the marginal utility per dollar ratios change, and you will change the amount of gum you purchase with your $2.50 income here. So it turns out that when the price of gum is 50 cents, you only buy 1 pack of gum. When it's 25 cents, you buy 4. And look, it's a demand curve. It slopes downward. The relationship is negative. And then why? Why is it that when the price goes up, the quantity decreases from 4 to 1? And the answer is there's an income effect, because now, with the price of gum 50 cents, you don't have the money to buy the same quantity as before. You couldn't buy 3 M&Ms and 4 gums. Now that gum's 50 cents a piece, you would need $3.50. You only have $2.50. So that's the income effect. Your income doesn't go as far. And then the substitution effect says even if you did have $3.50, these utility per dollar rates become more favorable now for M&Ms rather than gum. And so you would choose more to buy more of the substitute, the other good, which is M&Ms instead of gum. That's the substitution effect. So they've applied the substitution and income effect, the economists have, to safer cars, to aspirin bottles, and so forth. Time is a constraint as well, so you always have to concern yourself with factoring in time costs, not just money costs. Then the last bit of this chapter has to do with consumer surplus, and consumer surplus has a definition. The consumer surplus definition is the difference between, this is not a good definition. It's the difference between what a consumer pays for a good, that's the price, P1, and what it's worth to them, shown by the demand curve, which is their utility. So how much they're willing to pay based on their utility shows up in the demand curve, and how much they actually pay is the price in the market. So this difference between the amount that this person pays, this first person pays, and what it's worth to them is that person's consumer surplus. The second person, it's worth that much to them, and they only pay that much. So the second person has that vertical distance of consumer surplus. Anyway, it goes on, and the consumer surplus decreases. And this last person who buys it, that Q1th unit, this person, it's worth price P1 to them, and that's how much they pay. So they get no consumer surplus. This podcast on how to exploit others has to do with producer and consumer surplus. It's interesting. For some reason, the consumer surplus is in Chapter 6, but producer surplus is not. It's odd that the book organizes it that way. Now, if you go back to the faculty.ivc.edu page and you go to exercises here, there is a quiz that covers elasticity, a little bit of elasticity, a little utility, and a little supply and demand. So there is some practice. I think it's better if you use the online practice quiz that you find on the Blackboard site. Then, of course, there are the painful puns. Yeah, what the heck? No, the style invitational. This is, you have to do change one letter in a word and then define it. So, giraffe, feety, it's vandalism sprayed very, very high. Reincarnation, coming back to life as a hillbilly. Osteopornosis instead of osteoporosis. Osteopornosis, a degenerate disease. Anyway, this is good. And finally, on this page, you could look at study questions. I don't know if they're helpful to you, but Lesson 6 study questions, particularly this one, number 4. You should be able to do this question. It asks you to plug in the numbers for the utility maximizing rule and see if, in fact, you have maximized. And if you haven't, should you buy more of good A, or in this case, crackers or cheese? So that's it for Chapter 6, Utility. It's got utility in it, law of diminishing marginal utility, the utility maximizing rule, and it has consumer surplus and how to calculate it in it. So that's it. Thanks. Bye.